Mr. Beheshti, we're here in front of Mr. Rishi Sunak's residence, Downing Street in London. Just around the corner you have your camp where you were on hunger strike for 72 days, and it's exactly the day when 72 days last year were fulfilled and you have to be taken to hospital because your body couldn't bear the hunger strike anymore. I would like to ask you to clarify for everybody and especially for people who have responsibility in politics, what is the values one can imagine that would be implemented by a regime that governs Iran right now, and what are values you are fighting for?
So basically the values that we are fighting for is the values that we have here now. The values of humanity. The democratic values, British democratic values that we all are benefiting now. But what is regime aiming for? Destroying these values. Because there is no values there. There is no any value for human rights, for any individual basic rights that the regime have. So this is what we are fighting for. And I can make it very, very simple. It's not about there anymore. It's not about Iran anymore. It's not about Israel anymore. It's not about region anymore. The Islamism, the fascism, it's here now. And this is what the Iranian regime worked on for past at least 35 years, 36 years, to grow the Islamism, grow the fascism, the radicalism here in our soil, in UK, in Europe, and in America. That's why they have all these charities, so-called charities, religious centers, mosques, in order to brainwash our youth, radicalize them, and turn them into the enemies of these values that we are benefiting now. And that's why we are witnessing, especially after October the 7th, we see the rise of anti-Semitism and radicalism and Islamism in our soil. This is not happening today. This is the result of 35 years at least work of the Islamic Republic of Iran and us in action, or in action, because we don't know this enemy. We don't know their ideology. We don't know their strategies. We don't know their tactics. We don't know their goals. So how can we fight them if we don't know anything about them? Basically, I can put it this way. In 1979, in Iran, this catastrophe happened, what we are witnessing, and they destroyed Iran for past 45 years. 2 years before that, if somebody told us in 2 years' time they will execute in Iran in different streets for having different political view or having different belief, no one would believe it. But it happened in 2 years. If somebody told us they would be flogging and stoning women for having different relationship outside of the marriage or not wearing their hijab properly, no one would believe it, but it happened. This is what we are warning our British fellow human beings, our leaders. The threat of Islamism, fascism, and radicalism is serious in this country. And they are aiming for all our values. And if we don't act soon, it will be too late.
Can you please explain for those who do not really are deep into politics, what are Mr. Rishi Sunak and Mr. David Cameron doing to fight this danger, this risk, and what are they not doing?
Basically, because I believe they don't know this system, they don't know this regime, They don't know these people. They cannot do anything, and they are not doing anything. You have to know their ideology, you have to know their tactics, you have to know their goals to be able to fight them, to confront them. Because they don't know them, they're constantly playing in the ground that the regime laid for us. That's why we are locked in this vicious circle for past 45 years. Just look at their hostage-taking policy. We are paralyzed in front of their hostage-taking policy. We cannot do anything. Blatantly, they are taking our citizens hostage, and they force us to sit around one table and negotiate with them and provide the fund that they are required. We are allowing them to be active freely in our streets, in our soil, to have all these organizations under the name of charities, have all these Islamic centers, have all these mosques to brainwash our youth. We are allowing the enemy to come to our soil and brainwashing our youth and turning them into our own enemies because we don't know them. When we talk about the prescription of IRGC, Mr. David Cameron claimed, because I want to have a direct communication with the Iranian regime, I don't want to prescribe them the IRGC, because if I prescribe IRGC, they will shut down our embassy and we are not going to have direct communication. Our question from our foreign minister is this: what is your achievement with having direct communication with this evil regime for past 45 years? Tell us what is your achievement. He said it's not in the interest of Britain to prescribe IRGC. Tell us what is the interest of Britain? What is the interest of British people? We think in this case, basically, unfortunately, our government, because of the lack of knowledge about this evil regime, compromising our national security and our values for what they are not aware of.
So do you think that Labour government would do better?
I don't know. They said as soon as they come in power, they will prescribe IRGC, but that's the promise that we got from Mr. Rishi Sunak when he was not in power. Few months before he elected as a prime minister, he said the same thing. He said the IRGC should be placed on the terrorist list. But when he got the seat in number 10, he forgot, I think, about it. And they constantly talking about the sanctions. But we know sanctions are not effective at all. They are laughing at us when we put sanction on any of the IRGC's member and commanders. They are not leaving Iran at all. They don't have any asset here, the commanders. So what they are, as Mr. Zarif, the previous foreign minister of the regime says, he says, we have a PhD in going around all these sanctions. We learn how to go around them.
If Mr. Rishi Sunak just came out here and would be ready to talk to you, what would you tell him? What you presume he might not know, or what he really should do instantly to avoid the ongoing propaganda of the regime to brainwash British youth?
First of all, he has to bring experts in his circle and take the advice. That's the first thing he has to do. Take the advice from the right people, from the Iranian expert who knows this regime very well, and they know how we can counter this regime. That's the first step they need to do. Then we can go through the other stuff. But the first step after this is prescription of IRGC, because by prescribing IRGC, we're sending a strong message to the regime that we are not going to tolerate any of this kind of behavior in our soil and in the region. That's the only language they respond to and they understand. Pressure.
And my last question is how somebody who is not really interested in politics but might struggle in everyday life, how can he avoid falling into the trap of the regime in Iran? Because the regime in Iran, as you know, they love to reach out to people who are in dire situations, like they did with Hezbollah in Lebanon, like they do with the Houthis in Yemen. And they give them money and brainwash them with their own ideology. What would you tell these people? What is the danger of being treated by Islamic regime by being given money and housing and whatever?
The Iranian regime is like a virus. This regime, the IRGC, the Islamic Republic regime, is like a virus. It's very dangerous and it affects the society before we realize. So it's very complicated to the normal people to understand this regime. So you have to, for example, myself, I dedicated my life at least for 20 years. I studied this regime day and night to know the regime. I paid a big price for it. I sacrificed a lot for it. But it's the very basic thing I can tell my fellow British citizens. The Islamism that we are facing today, the radicalism, the fascism that we are experiencing in our soil is the result of the great work, intensive work and constant work of the Iranian regime for past 35 years. And if we don't wake up soon, it will be too late. We have to wake up, we have to be aware of what's happening around us.
So we shouldn't fall for the tactics of the regime, we should look at the goal.
Exactly. Their goal is to turn the modern world, the modern society into Islamic state, to caliphate. And they do anything, everything that they can.
So what is the future prospect for the children of us, of fellow citizens?
So if we continue with the same policies, with the same way that we are going, is a very dark future. It's not. I don't see any light in that if we are continuing. But that's why we are paying a lot, we are sacrificing a lot to not go into that future.